All right, welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, 7/22/25 on your monitor and in your journal. The 29th Tuesday of the year, not much on the calendar today outside of Taco Tuesday, which you will likely need to enjoy inside because it is HOT almost everywhere on the 33rd day of summer. In Washington, D.C., it's hot. And there's plenty on the calendar. President Trump hosting yet another world leader at the White House today, Ferdinand Bong Bong Marcos Jr., the president of the Philippines, who is the son of former Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos, and the first Southeast Asian leader to visit the White House during Trump's second term. So they'll do the meet and greet this morning, have a bilateral meeting with press, have a private lunch, all that. Maybe Trump will ask him where or how he got the nickname Bong Bong. Then tonight, President Trump participates in a reception with Republican members of Congress, some of whom are trying to dip out early for the summer recess and not vote on the two measures related to the Epstein case. Some others want to get those measures through before they go home to their constituents who generally, overwhelmingly, want the Epstein information released. House Speaker Mike Johnson, meanwhile, said on Monday that it won't happen until after the recess.
The majority party has stated its position, and it is mine and it is the president's, that we want maximum disclosure. So the rest of it is a political game that Democrats are playing, and I hope Republicans don't join it.
Basically echoing the president's sentiment on the Republicans that are pushing for it, without calling them weaklings. Meanwhile, President Trump has hinted that the Senate should work through the summer recess or part of their recess to concentrate on getting the rest of his nominees confirmed. A topic of discussion on this morning's Wake Up America with Mark Lauder and Charla McBride.
President Trump urging Senate Majority Leader John Thune to cancel the vacation, keep everybody in town. Keep them away from the August recess to approve some of his key nominees.
Yeah, will senators give up their 6-week recess to stick around and try to get more of President Trump's appointees and judges approved? That is the big question. It hasn't been officially asked, though, yet. So joining us now is Tennessee Senator, member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Marsha Blackburn. Great to see you this morning. So I think you'd agree that calling off the August recess, not great, but there's a lot on the president's agenda. So can everything get done?
I believe everything can get done because we can work nights, we can work some weekends. We know lots of families have vacations planned that first week of August before children go back to school and colleges start their fall semesters. And if we come back, I think it would be that last week of the break toward Labor Day and not the first part of August. But we are moving forward. We are going to begin appropriations this week. We will have the MilCon bill. We will also add agriculture and ledge branch to that if we get the consent. Move those three bills so that we get on a Trump budget with a Trump number and begin to reduce these out-of-control spending levels that we have seen during the Biden era.
Yeah, and when we're talking about these nominations and the August recess, I mean, a lot of people just think judges, but a large number of high-level cabinet staff need to be approved. One example, acting U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, former Trump lawyer Elena Haba. She's done after today. Her 120-day assignment will be over unless the judges agree to keep her. That kind of position needs to be approved. I mean, have you ever seen this level of Democrat opposition to every appointment that's been made, not just a few of the high-profile ones?
You're exactly right about that. And bear in mind, it is U.S. attorneys, U.S. marshals, district judges. And the Democrats are slow-walking everything. They are taking longer to get through committee. They are calling cloture on every single one of these instead of moving them in groups. And the Democrats, and this is what is so interesting to me, they think they are doing this to hurt President Trump, but what they're doing is hurting the people that they've been elected to represent, because most people want law and order. Most people want to see individuals abiding by the rule of law. And if you're denying these marshals and U.S. attorneys and district judges to get into place, you're not going to have that law enforcement that is so vital that people actually voted for and want to see President Trump put in place.
Yeah, no, you make a great point. While we have you with this, I want to pivot to Jeffrey Epstein, because I know that you have been very outspoken for years on wanting to, get the Epstein files released, the client list released, the flight logs as well. Do you think we'll ever really get all of the answers as to who was involved?
My objective in this is to get justice for women and girls and children that have been trafficked. And we know human trafficking is $150 billion a year business. I would like to know who was involved with him in the human trafficking. It's a global ring. And I trust President Trump and AG Bondi that they're releasing some of this court information. I think that we are all committed to breaking apart these human trafficking rings that are really modern day slavery. We need to put an end to this.
Tennessee Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn on Wake Up America this morning. Yesterday, the Trump administration did release records of the FBI's surveillance of Martin Luther King Jr., containing more than 240,000 pages of records that had been under a court-imposed seal since 1977, back when the FBI turned them over to the National Archives and the Records Administration. 240,000 pages. It's all digital, but still. President Obama and his administration, also the focus of a lot of news, as I had discussed on yesterday's Newsmax Daily, and we'll get into that in a moment with Finnerty and Greg Kelly. First, Rob Schmitt spoke with the attorney handling President Trump's $20 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal and its owners.
Alejandro Bridto is the president's lead attorney in this $20 billion lawsuit. He joins us now, and sir, it's good to have you on. The Journal took a really big swing here. And as somebody, I came up through all of these different networks. I'm shocked that they took such a big swing when they couldn't show us any proof, no pictures or anything like that. We're just supposed to trust that these reporters saw this and that they weren't duped by somebody that hates the president themselves. What are your thoughts on what they did here as far as the journalistic integrity of it?
Rob, that's a great point to lead into, because in advance of the article being published, they reached out to the president and advised him that they were going to be reporting about this artificial or disingenuous letter that they claim exists. Never provided an opportunity for the president to see what they were referring to, because it doesn't exist. There is no veracity to their story. We explained to them that this was not a genuine letter, that there was no truth behind the story, that this was something that the president had authored. And keep in mind, this, as you noted, dates back to 2003. And now, obviously, there's a reason why it's being published now, and the timing is intentional. And there's really a lot of bad faith from our perspective as to when it was released and how this story was run, because we tried to communicate to them, and despite our efforts, they went ahead and published this article, which we believe is a defamatory statement. It's libelous, and it's conduct that evidences the bad faith in which they traveled with.
Yeah, I've thought about this story all last week. It looks to me like, the president, I mean, obviously, Jeffrey Epstein was removed from MaraLago, was actually thrown out of the club. And it seems like they started seeing more and more evidence that this guy was a creep right around probably 2004. And that was about the end of the relationship with the president. I think when he saw it, I think when everybody saw what Epstein really was, that a lot of people moved away from him. And I think that's what we're going to see here. What we're going to find out was the real story here of this friendship that the media is so obsessed with that they think implicates the president as some kind of a pervert. But the funny thing is, even Trump's greatest enemies, Michael Cohen, of all people, did not buy this allegation from the Wall Street Journal. Take a listen to this.
I've never, not once, and again, over 13 years of being by the man's side, I have never once seen him doodle. I never saw him draw a picture. In fact, I would be very shocked if Donald Trump actually can doodle. It's just not his thing. And the language, using words like enigma, that's not a Donald Trump word. I mean, he certainly knows what the word is, but it's not a word that he uses. I found the whole thing just to be odd.
That's a crazy soundbite from a man that hates the president more than probably anybody in the world.
Rob Schmitt with Alejandro Bridto, President Trump's lead attorney in his $20 billion lawsuit against the Wall Street Journal and its owners. That audio of Michael Cohen there, remember when they couldn't say his name without saying President Trump's fixer? Michael Cohen, President Trump's fixer, was on CNN there with Jake Tapper, whose face is like, oh no, this is not what I was expecting you to say. And CNN is a good segue into the other big story, starting it off with Finnerty.
The Russia hoax. Russia was made up. Russia wrong. Russia. I never worked for Russia, and you know that answer better than anybody. I never worked for Russia. Not only did I never work for Russia, I think it's a disgrace that you even asked that question.
4 years of that, but the president was wrong. It never should have been Russia. It should have been Obama all along. This story has gotten some attention over the past few days, but it's hard to follow, and we think that in many ways people have probably moved on, and we get that. But the basic accusation has not changed. In 2016, Democrats accused Donald Trump of colluding with Russia to win the election, which never really made much sense, did it? You're telling me that Donald Trump, a billionaire businessman best known for starring in The Celebrity Apprentice and The Apprentice and then hosting Miss America pageants, somehow convinced Vladimir Putin to help him get elected 10 years ago, and then Vladimir Putin decided to play along? Why would Vladimir Putin play along? Why would Vladimir Putin want Donald Trump to be president? How does that make any sense? But for 4 years, that is all we ever heard from Democrats in the legacy media, every single day.
Russia hacking the election to elect Trump is the end of our democracy. Votes were definitely affected. Russia hacked the election to tilt it to Mr. Trump.
The Russians definitively hacked the election.
Russia did hack the election. No doubt. The Russians hacked the election.
Yes, Russia hacked the election.
President-elect Donald Trump still not sounding convinced that Russia hacked the election.
The legacy media reporting that Russia hacked the election, and they reported this like it was a fact. And poof, Russiagate was born. The problem, it was never true. And according to a trove of documents just released by Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, a former Obama voter, by the way, not only did Barack Obama know before the 2016 election that Russian interference would not impact the outcome of the election, they also knew it after the election. But Barack Obama never said a word. According to an intelligence assessment that came out on September the 12th, 2 months before Election Day, quote, foreign adversaries do not have the capabilities to successfully execute widespread and undetected cyber attacks, and that the Obama administration manufactured intelligence to create the narrative that Russia was attempting to influence the 2016 presidential election, despite information from the intelligence community stating the opposite. Well, isn't that interesting? We never heard about that in 2016, did we? Tulsi Gabbard tweeting over the weekend that these documents detail a treasonous conspiracy by officials at the highest levels of the Obama White House to subvert the will of the American people and usurp the president from fulfilling his mandate. And Barack Obama, the president of the United States, never said a word. Instead, he pushed the lie to sabotage the incoming president and hurt Donald Trump.
My hope is that the president-elect is going to similarly be concerned with making sure that we don't have potential foreign influence in our election process. I don't think any American wants that. And that shouldn't be a source of an argument. At a time when my primary concern was making sure that the integrity of the election process was not in any way damaged. At a time when anything that was said by me or anybody in the White House would immediately be seen through a partisan lens.
All he had to say is that Russia did not interfere in the election. And that's all wonderful, Barack. The problem, those comments came after the election, after Donald Trump had won, and after your own intelligence people concluded that Russia did not interfere in the election. You knew it then, you know it now. But Barack never said anything like that. If he had just come out right then and there, December 16th, 2016, and said there was no Russia, there was no Russian interference, that would have ended Russia, Russia, Russia forever. But instead, he pushed that fake narrative. That led to a 4-year effort to overthrow Donald Trump. On December 8th, 2016, 1 month to the day after the election, President Obama's daily brief contained a document that stated, quote, "We assess that Russian and criminal actors did not impact the recent U.S. election results." But Barack Obama never said that. He never said a word.
Rob Finnerty is the host of Finnerty, 8 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax, right before Greg Kelly reports at 9.
I want to emphasize to you, Mr. President-elect, that we now are going to want to do everything we can to help you succeed, because if you succeed, then the country succeeds.
Yeah, right. You dirty dog and your whole team. You were so mad the morning after the election, and you guys vowed to do even more to sabotage that man's presidency than you'd already done to sabotage his campaign. The dirty dozen, 10 dozen, how many people were involved, we don't know, but getting more and more insight into it a little bit. We have 100 pages of documents from the Directorate of National Intelligence, DNI. And to be honest, a lot of this is gobbledygook. It provides something of a roadmap to the Russia hoax and how Russia, totally threw this thing to Trump, which is not true. But it really was a lesson for me in how these bureaucrats write. We have moderate confidence that there is a low probability, that there is a high likelihood that something awful is going to happen within the next 6 to 18 months. It's how they talk. It's CYA, right? Everybody knows what a CYA email is. Cover your rear end, right? It's just a swamp game, all of it. It is a mess, but this is how they roll. And the people who have mastered this game, well, they actually shot themselves in the foot. These folks, Comey, Brennan, and the rest of them, it is all coming out slowly but surely. Actually doing something about it, well, these people are clever. I'll tell you that. They tried to cover their tracks, but I think we got them. If not in outright criminal behavior, certainly in, well, no one should ever believe this man again, no matter what comes out of his mouth.
What I was concerned about in particular was making sure that that wasn't compounded by potential hacking that could hamper vote counting, affect the actual election process itself. And so in early September, when I saw President Putin in China, I felt that the most effective way to ensure that that didn't happen was to talk to him directly and tell him to cut it out, and there were going to be some serious consequences if he didn't.
This made news a long time ago. What amused me the most was, cut it out, Vladimir, cut it out. Like, that's going to work, right? He has no persuasion skills with somebody like Vladimir Putin. But he said he was concerned that some of these technologies, the Russians, would influence the vote counting. Well, his own intelligence agencies said that was not a risk. Document after document, a lot of the names redacted, but if you can see this one, I know it's a little bit hard, okay? I took the intent of this email to get the basic starting point regarding Russia. We agree with Russia probably is not and will not trying to influence the election by using cyber means to manipulate computer-enabled election infrastructure. I know that's a little bit awkward, but that's kind of the way they like it. They bury this stuff and then they shroud it in jargon. But this says right here that the intelligence community did not believe what Barack Obama said.
All right, so Greg is reading from one of the many emails that was declassified by the Department of National Intelligence back on Friday. Here is one more from the FBI attempting to correct the verbiage in some of the releases.
In these documents, the FBI at one point actually wanted to pull the FBI's seal of approval on a great big document that said just that. Take a look again. Below are the inputs from the FBI. Sorry for the delay, top of the screen here, due to a long weekend. Okay, now check this out. On page 5, under blah, 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 adversaries with intent section, we would prefer for the first sentence, okay, come back here, regarding Russia's intent to be softened. This is the FBI's recommendation. The way it currently reads, it would indicate that we have definitive information that Russia does intend to disrupt our elections, and we are uncomfortable making that assessment. How about that?
Again, that's Greg Kelly, host of Greg Kelly Reports, 9 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. Let's wrap it up by revisiting what Tulsi Gabbard said when she announced that she was leaving the Democratic Party a few years ago.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
The elitist cabal. Then she announced at a Trump rally in North Carolina, you may remember, that she was joining the Republican Party and supporting the MAGA movement. Okay, so President Trump is meeting with the president of the Philippines today to discuss trade, among other things. I mentioned yesterday, South Korea's national security advisor is in Washington as well to secure a trade deal. And the premiers of several Canadian provinces met in Alberta, I believe, yesterday to discuss a trade deal with the United States before the August 1st deadline. And something that you haven't heard much about, but you definitely will be hearing about, is this new Alberta pipeline into the United States. Absolutely the most technologically advanced pipeline that is going to be part of the deal that we make with them. On a side note, having nothing to do with the White House or tariffs, it's just interesting. The pipeline reminded me of it, though, but Elon Musk's boring company, right? The underground tunnels, is apparently in talks or having conversations with Universal Studios here in my hometown of Orlando about making some kind of underground system to quickly get around Universal properties and to International Drive or I-Drive, which is basically the tourist district. I'm no engineer, but it's a pretty well-known fact that you don't have to dig too deep in the state of Florida before you hit water, so I don't know that will actually happen, but that's what's going on. Not only would it be quicker, easier, and more efficient, but it would keep you out of the heat as well. Oh, and let the record show that I don't live in Orlando because I'm like some kind of Disney or theme park person, freak. I moved here years ago to work for Cox Media. And on Wall Street, stocks opened slightly lower to flat this morning after the NASDAQ and S&P 500 closed at new all-time highs again yesterday. And United Kingdom-based biotech giant AstraZeneca announced that it will spend $50 billion on its U.S. operations by 2030, with the focus of that being a massive new production facility in the state of Virginia. Bitcoin is currently up more than $2,000, over $119,000 again this morning. Most other major cryptocurrencies are flat. Be sure to keep up with all of the news and breaking developments throughout the day on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. We will, of course, be covering the bilateral meeting and news conference with the President and the President of the Philippines. The news starts each and every morning with Wake Up America, followed by National Report, Newsline at noon with Bianca De La Garza, all the way through Greta Van Susteren at 6, Rob Schmitt Tonight, Finnerty, Greg Kelly reports at 9, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Enjoy the rest of your day and your tacos. Pay attention and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.